System. Today we have the all-new, all-powerful Vortex Razor Gen 3. So the 1 to 10 razor gets a sibling, and it proves once again that Vortex knows exactly what long-range shooters want and need in a scope. Normally, your sort of long-range tactical scopes maxed out at around 25 or so power. Then there was a bit of a gap, and then a jump to more bench rest sort of competition type scopes that were in or near the 50 power range. I know that's not covering everything. There are some exceptions to that statement, of course, but they usually had some sort of drawback. When you start to increase the magnification, a lot of scopes that were on the market, they had some kind of deal breaker, like maybe the turret travel wasn't sufficient, or maybe it was second focal plane only, or maybe the scope just sucked. Luckily, this Razor Gen 3 does not suck, so we're going to keep talking about it. So it's the same 6 magnification zoom ratio as the Razor Gen 2, 4.5 to 27, 3 to 18, and all that, but they have increased the base magnification to 6 and the top end at 36. So it's a 6 to 36 by 56. Now that shift in the magnification range is a really good idea because, let's be honest, most people don't use their scopes at their lowest setting, and it's good to give up that 1.5 power down low compared to the 4.5 27 to get that extra 9 power up top. It's more than just a shift in the magnification. This has the same glass as the Gen 3 1 to 10 razor, so it is a little bit of an upgrade over the Gen 2. And I think a lot of the uses that this scope will be seeing is, I think there'll be a lot of PRS type shooting, because a lot of times in PRS the targets can be really small, or your super long range ELR type shooting where the targets are just in different zip codes. It would actually also be at home on a 22, because we see a lot of 22 matches where the shots can get out to a pretty good distance, a couple hundred yards. The targets can be very small, and because 22 doesn't exactly make a big old splash on a piece of steel or dirt, having the extra magnification can help you see those tiny impacts downrange. It also has 10-yard parallax, which is pretty advantageous for those shooting 22. Now there is a new reticle in here called the EBR-7D. We have the 7C and the 7D right up here on screen here, and the way that you can tell the difference is by looking at the titles. So 7C, 7D. That's the difference. All joking aside, there is a slight difference between those two reticles. The 7D is a little thinner on the main reticle, 0.1 MOA on that versus 0.11 on the 7C. The center dot on the 7D is also 0.1 MOA compared to 0.14 on the 7C. The biggest difference though is the illumination. On the 7D, it's just the main vertical and horizontal versus the 7C, where it's that plus the branches of the tree, if you will. And really the outer parts of the reticle that are far from center, they are just a little bit different, but I mean, it's pretty rare to use that portion of the reticle anyway. At max power, 36, you'll see the field of view is basically going to give you up to the 20 MOA mark on this one here. Now that does kind of cut that in half. So realistically speaking, if you're shooting with this thing at full power, you really want to practically consider yourself 16 or 18 MOA of usable parts of the reticle and whatever that is in the mils. So just so you know how much of the reticle is visible at full power. Now, moving up to the turrets, we see the same lift to turn function that we see on the Gen 2 Razor, but the zeroing function is a little bit different. And by different, I mean it's a little bit easier. So you want to pay attention here because you don't want to hit the range not knowing exactly how this works. So, step one, get this tool. It is your friend, do not lose it, very important. Now the first thing you'll want to do is lift up the turret and max it in the down direction. When you do that, you'll be able to go about 5 clicks or so beneath the zero. Now, go back to zero, face it up, and then lock it down. Take your special friend tool here and unlock, loosen this screw that's right here on the turret. When you do so, you can actually move the guts of the optic to physically zero the scope with this metal part of this tool in this part on top of the scope. Now that's not going to physically click, so if you have a super accurate rifle, you can actually get a zero between the clicks, so to speak. So when that is done, when you're satisfied with your zero, you can re-index your turret to zero, tighten this up here, and you're done. Now again, this zero stop system will let you go 1 1/4 MOA beneath your zero or 1/2 mil beneath your zero. And that's so that if you need to dial up for a closer range shot or you need to fine tune your zero depending on ammo or time of the year or whatever, it is easy to do that. Now for this next part, I'm going to need to borrow a 4.5 to 27. Okay, so I've got one right here, and what I'm going to talk about real quick are the feelings and the sound of the turrets compared to each other. So the 4.5 27, let's get a sample here by my microphone. Very well defined, a little loud of course, but still very good. The turrets on the new 36, a little bit quieter, a little bit more subdued, but just as well defined. If we get a little sample here. The turrets on this scope, the 36, have a little bit more effort to turn, but it is still very well defined and a very good turret. Two more things about this turret that I want to mention before moving on. First, it does have a rev counter, so as you dial this thing out, you'll have it stick out the left side of the optic, and whichever rev you're on, it'll indicate that as well by a series of lines. And the other part of this turret that honestly surprised me quite a lot is the travel. Now usually when you have a higher powered optic, all else being equal, the turret travel is a bit lacking. This one, not so much, 121 MOA, or 36 mils on that version. I spoke to one of Vortex's engineers on that, and he referred to that much travel as a lot. And it truly is, 121 MOA, about 36 mils, that is a lot of travel. And usually when I do these videos on scopes, I like to mention with that travel, how much MOA in your rail or mounts can you do and still be able to get a 100-yard zero, for example. Now this Barrett's got 27 MOA built in, so we're good there, but you'd be okay actually doing up to a 60 MOA combination of rail and mounts, or all in the rail, none in the mounts, or vice versa. But yeah, 60 MOA on your mount, you'd still be able to get a 100-yard zero. Speaking of mounts, we see this sitting in Vortex's precision matched rings. These are the 1.45" height, and we have a nice healthy bit of clearance between the scope and the rail. And when it comes to torque, now these screws here are able to take over 25 inch-pounds, but you don't want to go to that level of torque on scopes. Vortex says no more than about 18 inch-pounds, because anything more than that and you risk kind of pinching the tube, and that can of course damage the optic, but it is going to mess up your parallax a little bit as well, because as you spin the parallax knob, that runs on a track on this part of the optic, and if you pinch the tube, it's going to go off that track and your parallax is going to be stuck at whatever distance you had before. So for those two reasons, just obey the 18 inch-pound and you'll be good. Okay, so I've got the Gen 2 4.5/27 up here for one more comparison. And if you know this scope, you know it's a bit heavy. And the fact that it weighs as much as a small church is not lost on Vortex either. So with this scope, they actually trimmed the weight down a little bit and still made it more powerful. And that's really nice when you see that the optic is a little bit longer, a little bit bigger. You would expect it to be a little bit heavier. Where the Gen 2 comes in at 48 ounces, the Gen 3 36 power comes in at 45. It's no longer the fat kid, and it's nice to see that Vortex actually listened to what people were saying about their optics, because a lot of manufacturers, to be honest, they'll hear some kind of gripe about their products and they'll go, oh, that's terrible, and then do nothing about it. But Vortex, in their endless quest for customer service, they listen. So when you get one of these scopes, you will also get a throw lever. It'll come with a sunshade as well, and it'll come with caps like these. These are not exactly flip caps, they're more so just for storage, but if you use the Defender flip caps from Vortex, you'll need the E10 for the eyepiece and the O56 for the objective. If you do want Tenebrex caps, which we carry, we'll put a link down in the description for which ones you would need for that. So to wrap it up, Vortex, they knocked it out of the park again with this scope. More power, more travel, less weight, nicer turrets, a nicer zero stop system. I really can't think of anything negative about this scope. I mean, it's going to be a really popular optic. All right, so Justin said I wasn't allowed to leave until I found something on this scope that I don't like. I mean, looks like they used a Helvetica font on the numbers and all this sort of stuff here. I'm more of a Times New Roman guy. And of course, what is a Vortex video without talking about their warranty? So if you have your scope and you're out in the desert having fun and some a-hole knocks you into a sarlacc pit, if you can make it out of there with your scope damaged, Vortex will replace it for you. Lastly, this comes with our red one-day shipping. That'll do it for part one on this. We have a second video that's going to be launching today, January 6th as well. That is a new magnifier, so definitely check that out. I'll see you there.